Kira blows up, then Isagi is beating his ass.
Hello, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about my 2025 Blue Lock predictions. I know I already talked about this in a TikTok video, but I feel like in the video I was being too broad, and a lot of the events that I was talking about aren't going to be happening in a span of only a year. They'll be taking place within 2025, 2026, maybe even 2027. So today I decided to go into more of the specifics and talk about what I think is going to happen in the next couple matches and what might start off the new arc. Let's get into it. Okay, so first let's start talking about the matches that are currently happening, which is PXG versus BM and Barcha versus Manshine City. Personally, I think that BM is going to beat PXG. I'm predicting that we're going to see either Yukimiya or Kunigami thrive, but it's not going to be both of them. Right now, because of the last 2 leaks, I'm pretty sure that we're going to see Yukimiya grow rather than Kunigami. This might lead to Yukimiya's ranking increasing, but Kunigami's dropping to maybe 10th place. Also, if you've been keeping up with the manga, now we know that Isagi and Kaiser are finally working together. And it's going to be Isagi and Kaiser's team up versus Rin and Shido's team up. Because Rin is still focused on this idea of being independent, even during the U20 arc, he absolutely hated the idea that everyone was backing him up. I think that Isagi and Kaiser are going to succeed and defeat Rin and Shido in a 2v2. If we see Kaiser and Isagi thrive and win, then we're definitely going to get a scene where Ness is realizing that Kaiser doesn't need him anymore. It's definitely going to be a scene where Ness is going to shed a couple tears and realize that he's unworthy of his king's attention. As much as I wish that Kunigami and Ness both thrive in the rest of this match, I do not think this is going to happen right now. I feel like the author's more focused on different things. In terms of the rankings that might change because of the PXG and BM match, I think that Isagi will raise his ranking to number 1 while Rin falls to number 2. I think that Shido will increase to number 3 while Barrow goes down to number 4. And I think that Yukimiya might increase a couple rankings and Kunigami will drop maybe 1 or 2. Raichi, because he did so good at defending, Hiyori and Karasu will increase their rankings as well. I think this might be the final arc where we see Igaguri unless something happens magically. However, I feel like the author wouldn't sacrifice another character that does have potential in order to keep a comedic relief like Igaguri. I think we'll also get another interaction between Isagi and Noel Noah, and it's not gonna be as nice as Isagi in past games. Yeah, Isagi is not being nice in Noel Noah anymore. Now, in terms of Manshine City and Barcha, I think that Manshine City is going to win. Mostly because Reo and Nagi have both been plummeting in the rankings and been called one-hit wonders multiple times, while Oitoya and Bachira have been staying very consistent. They're both in the top 10 and they both don't have threats of getting eliminated. The author has been slowly setting up this win or get eliminated situation for Reo and Nagi, and I feel like we even might get a confrontation from a coach or just Reo himself telling Nagi that, hey, you're not as good and you're not as valued as you were before. You need to win and score a goal. Now, I don't know if we're going to see this full match in the main story or if we're going to see it in episode Nagi, but I do think that we're going to see Reo and Nagi lock in together rather than apart. I feel like we've been getting the scenario multiple times of Nagi realizing that he needs to let Reo go, and I feel like it's getting a little repetitive. This time, I feel like they're going to figure out a way to work together, maybe even in a trio with Chigiri, since Chigiri is doing much better than the other two in terms of rankings, and I could even see a Chris Prince versus Vivino matchup in the match. In terms of final rankings, I think that Nagi and Reo will move up a little bit while Chigiri will stay the same. And for Barcha, I think that Bachira will stay the same and Oitoya will move down a couple places, because I know that even though they've lost all their games, they seem to be pretty high in the rankings no matter what. I really hope we get to see this match in the main story rather than episode Nagi, just because episode Nagi is really behind. And also, I don't think that episode Nagi will get this far in the manga, especially knowing that Nagi loses basically every match after Selection 2 unless you count U20. Okay, now let's talk about after the NEL arc. I think that there's going to be something like the Shibuya arc where they go bowling, except for instead of Isagi meeting someone like Tada, I feel like he might meet someone like Kira. I know how everyone jokes around like, oh, Kira is going to be the final boss. I don't necessarily think that. I definitely don't think that, but I do think it would be really cool to see him maybe on the streets, maybe they knock into each other and they have a conversation. It would be interesting to see how Isagi reacts in comparison to after the U20 match. I feel like Isagi's more confident in himself and he knows that it just isn't luck. I could see Kira just trying to have a peaceful conversation with Isagi. I don't know if he would necessarily blow up on Isagi and say that it's all his fault that he lost. However, I can see that happening.
Kira blows up, then Isagi is beating his ass. That'd be hilarious.
In terms of people who are going to get eliminated in this arc, I could really only say that Igaguri is definitely going to get eliminated, and it's going to be a lot of the U20 people who ended up joining Blue Lock. The only U20 players that are really safe are IQ because he's in the top 10 and Sendo, and I think the only Blue Lock players that kind of have relevance that are still in the arc that might leave are Nanase or Zentetsu, but I think that's pretty unlikely. Now it's time for my favorite part, which is discussing what I think the new arc is gonna be. I personally think the new arc is gonna be the U20 World Cup, and there's no way you're gonna change my opinion. Isagi literally said that his next goal is to win the U20 World Cup and lead his team to victory. I think this arc is gonna first start with the U20 World Cup qualifiers, because before you even get into the World Cup, you need to qualify for the World Cup. The qualifiers might be treated as some sort of tryout, like Selection 3, where they try out different lineups to see which one's the best for the actual games. However, I do think there are going to be some foundation players that are not going to be switching out, because it's 100% that they're going to be playing during the World Cup. And I think those players are going to be Isagi, Rin, IQ, and maybe Shido. With Shido, it really depends how well they actually play during the NEL arc with BM versus PXG. Now, I do think that they will be playing good together. However, if they don't, I feel like it might be another pathway where Ego's like, hey, you can't have Rin and Shido on the same field again because they won't play well together, so one of them must be sacrificed. And I think that if Isagi's playing, then Rin is the better matchup with Isagi, so Shido will then be sacrificed again. Oh, and I forgot. Gagamaru would definitely be in that lineup too. So it would be two defenders with IQ and Gagamaru, Isagi, Rin, and Shido potentially. Now, one of the big what ifs for this lineup is if Itoshi Sai will join in and play for the U20 Japan team. Now, this could go two ways. It could be that Sai changes his mind after playing U20 versus Blue Lock and realizes there are some potential strikers that will challenge him. Or it could be the same thing where he says he'll never play for Japan and he'll never play for the World Cup team there. I do think that Sai will be in the lineup and he'll choose to play, because I feel like it'll be a big missed opportunity for the author to bring in this big arc where Rin and Sai have to learn how to play with each other again and have to learn how to bond and be siblings again, basically. It would be a good opportunity for Rin's character development and the understanding that he can't be this individualistic player. He has to learn how to love soccer. He can't play for the sake of revenge and the sake of hatred. And if Sai joins, then Shido is definitely going to be starting in the lineup. It was so difficult deciding what the starting lineup would be, considering that there's so many different options with the 23 players. However, if I think that Sai is going to be in the lineup and he's going to play for the World Cup team, then my starting lineup is Shido, Rin, Isagi, Sai, Corona, Chigiri, IQ, Aryu, and Gagamaru. I've only said 9 people out of the 11, and that's because 2 positions change depending on what I'm deciding. Because I feel like Nagi could be put in for the sake of him being Nagi, but if Nagi isn't put in, then Bachira would be in place of him. And if Bachira is in place of him, then I don't think Reo would be starting. Basically, if Nagi is starting, then Reo will be starting. But if Bachira is starting instead of Nagi, then I think that Hiyori would start instead of Reo. It's hard to pick between Bachira and Nagi, so I just decided to say both lineups. People who could be replacing some of the people on the starting lineup, you can't have the same lineup 24/7. Someone's gonna get tired. I think that Baro's definitely gonna get some playing time, and I also think that Kunigami's gonna get some playing time. I feel like Kunigami will definitely be getting his development here, if anywhere, and I think that Raichi would definitely go in. I think personally in replacement for Aryu, because I feel like Aryu is such a strong character, you can't remove him. Thinking about it, I know I said on my TikTok video that I think Bachira would get injured out of anyone. I think that Aryu might actually get injured, and then Raichi would have to be put up. I also think that Nico, Karasu, and Oitoya can get a lot of playing time. However, I don't think they'll have some significant event happen to them. In the past, I said that Germany versus Japan would be the final of the U20 World Cup. However, I changed my mind, and now I think that Germany and Japan are going to be the quarterfinals or the semifinals. This is because personally, I think that Loki is more of an opponent rather than Kaiser and Ness, especially because their relationship is not on good terms. So I think that Loki being the final boss is more suitable than Kaiser. If all this stuff happens, I predict that we'll get a Shido backstory as well as a Rin and Sai interaction and character development from both of them, and that interaction will lead to Sai's backstory. And in addition to Sai's backstory, I think we'll get a wild card explanation for Kunigami. Now, if this stuff is going to happen in the main story or in another side story like episode Nagi, I really hope that Sai or Kunigami get their own side story or spin-off, because it would be really cool to see them as the main characters. I know a lot of this stuff won't happen in 2025 because the Blue Lock manga and the matches tend to run pretty slow, but I really love these predictions and I hope you enjoyed them too. If you have any predictions of your own, please tell me. I'm so happy to talk about Blue Lock. I'll be trying to post weekly after this break, but I can't promise anything. I hope you enjoy this video. See you soon!